Live from the Pitch Pad in New York City. Get ready to unleash your inner entrepreneur with Pitch Live with Amy Summers. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the Shark Tank, this is the place to be to discover how to turn your pitch into reality. Fasten your seatbelts, pitch stars, because the spotlight is on you and we are about to make success happen. On this episode of Pitch Live,
that jump that I had to take to feel comfortable making the pitch and finding confidence in myself to do that, I remember that being a total mindset shift when that sort of clicked for me. This was my first experience in media relations overall, so you're faced with having to do it, and then you just have to figure it out. Your mentorship and, the conversations we had about how to do that were really instrumental. And then it goes without saying, the base of, what has become my entire career. So it has really been really instrumental for me.
Get ready for Pitch Live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Pitch Live. I'm your host, Amy Summers, founder and president of Pitch Publicity and Box. I'm also a hardworking entrepreneur who's passionate about helping you reach success in any area of your life. And I know that is possible after decades of experience in perfecting the pitch and enhancing communication skills, which is why I'm here today and joined by Havana Gazlay, who is a former and forever pitch star, having interned with us at Pitch Publicity during some of the most isolating months of the COVID-19 pandemic from February to July of 2020. In fact, she was the last person I interviewed face-to-face before the pandemic, and just after I hired her, the entire country went into lockdown, making her role at Pitch Publicity a perfect fit and a highly sought-after internship, as we were already a remote company and ahead of what was about to become a major trend. Welcome, Havana.
Thank you, Amy. So happy to be here.
Well, before I dive into your full background, I want to do a quick little rapid fire round with you so our audience can get a sense of who you are. So I'm going to ask a few questions and give you 2 choices and just instinctively tell me what your answer is. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Havana was not prepped for this, but here we go. Palm trees or skyscrapers?
Palm trees.
Okay. Albert or Alberta?
Alberta.
Okay. Cookies or cupcakes?
Cookies.
Cookies. My kind of girl. I like that. Okay. Ballet or concert?
Concert.
Concert. All right. And Williamsburg or Dumbo?
Williamsburg.
Williamsburg. Okay. Now, during Havana's time with us, she graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in public relations. And since the job market was a little tough during the pandemic, Havana stayed with us a little bit after graduation, but not for long, because Havana is a true go-getter. And I vividly remembered the day she called me and said she was ready to take the next step and get serious about launching her professional career. And I was incredibly sad to see her go, but I was also really excited to see where she'd land next. Today, Havana has built an impressive career in public relations and is currently an account director at BerlinRosen on the cities and real estate team, where she develops media strategies and crafts compelling stories to reach and engage audience. And her background spans real estate, urbanism, and corporate communications, including launching luxury condominium projects in South Florida and multifamily projects across the United States. So welcome again, Havana.
Thank you.
So exciting to see all the success you have made happen. And I'm so excited to share that with everybody else on how you MSH'd your way to where you are now, or as we say, make shit happen, as you know I always say. Well, let's just start at your internship with Pitch Publicity. Now, looking back at that, it really began at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what was that like for you, especially since the time was it was a very uncertain time in navigating it all? What was the start of the internship like for you?
It sort of felt like a perfect storm, actually. Like you mentioned, I think it came at the exact time that I needed it. I was in my final semester of my senior year, preparing to graduate in May 2020, and I had no idea. We all had no idea what was going to happen. And I remember meeting you, and I knew that pitch would be my last internship in college. And it felt like it was going to be just the perfect pre-professional step for me to take before entering my career. And I think it just worked out perfect that I was able to get experience working remotely and learning what that looked like because I would come to find out that the first 2 years of my career would be fully remote and I would have to learn how to deal with that. So I think it really just worked out really perfectly, and I'm really grateful for the experience.
Yeah, who would have known, right? I think at the time we were all thinking that this was quite temporary, and who knew that like this would be like the next trend, really.
Mhm.
Um, we were at that time we were pitching so many campaigns, obviously with a COVID-19 angle, because that's what was top of mind with everybody. Was there one campaign? I looked back at, all of your schedules to see who you were working on, and when I was prepping for this podcast, I was like, "Oh my gosh, Havana did so many campaigns." But, was there one campaign or expert that really stood out to you that you remember from that time?
Yes. So I think we also talked about this a little bit when you hosted me for dinner a couple weeks ago. But Taraj Allen, the travel correspondent for the LGBTQ community, that was another situation where we had right, like you had absolutely no idea that the travel industry was going to take the direction that it went in. But I remember, working very closely with you and, the conversations and the leadership that you showed and being able to pivot when needed and change the direction and change the pitch to meet the market and meet the audience at the time. That was really, really valuable and a lot of skills that I, still think about to this day because we're similarly in, changing times and changing moments right now where it requires you to take a different angle, a different perspective. And so I remember that one specifically because it was, you know, pre-COVID, something that was so unique and so different and nothing that anyone had done before. And then all of a sudden we reach this point where we don't even know if it's going to be relevant at all. But we were able to, come out of that and, think outside of the box. So I think that was really cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to work with me on that because, a lot of our clients here at Pitch Publicity are health related. So the pivot on so many of our clients was kind of an easier one because all of a sudden talking about your health became very popular during that time. But Havana's referring to this one client that I had just signed like right before the pandemic hit, and they were Sagi Travel. They were a travel agency that was geared towards the LGBTQ community, and of all things, it was cruises that we were promoting. And I remember being so excited to have something different that wasn't health, that was travel. And then all of a sudden faced with, wow, they may cancel their contract on me because, like, I don't know, we can talk about travel again, or especially cruises. But we did pivot, and Havana was very instrumental in that. And I think we came up with a bunch of unique things. We had Taraj doing interviews about how to travel safely. And we also we had him do a whole series on Alexa, even, doing microcasts when we couldn't go in studio. So I'm glad you remembered that one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Um, now, during your time at Pitch, do you remember what your proudest pitch accomplishment was? Was there anything that stands out?
I think what stands out to me when I look back at that time, which is crazy to think that it was 5 years ago at this point, um, is not necessarily a win overall, but that jump that I had to take to feel comfortable making the pitch and finding confidence in myself to do that. I remember that being a really big turning point for me internally and getting my confidence the to know that I have the skills to do this job and do it well. And I remember it was just a total mindset shift when that sort of clicked for me. Of course, there's an intro period of a couple of weeks when you're learning the job, learning the content, learning what to do. But this was my first experience in media relations overall. So it was, a complete learning curve. You come out of college, you learn all these things about how to interact with media and how to pitch, and then you're faced with having to do it, and then you just have to figure it out. And so I felt like one, your mentorship and the conversations we had about how to do that were really instrumental. And then it got to a point where I was very confident and comfortable in talking to people and communicating and booking interviews and, doing all those things. And that is just, it goes without saying, the base of, what has become my entire career. So it has really been really, really instrumental for me.
That's amazing. I love that you say how much learning how to pitch built your confidence, because I always talk about that. It's such a confidence builder. And I always tell people when they come and intern with us, or just when I'm speaking to young professionals, like, if you can learn how to pitch, you can really learn how to do anything, because there's so many skills within the pitch that you have to learn. Overcoming objections, getting people to see things your way, even just getting a hold of them or being organized. So there's so many different aspects.
Absolutely. And I've come to have more conversations, throughout my career about how every single thing is a pitch, right? Like, if when you're going for a job and you're interviewing, you're pitching yourself and you're hoping that someone buys into, your beliefs and your experience. And then now I'm at a point in my agency now where we're pitching new business, and that's a really integral part of the agency life and bringing in new business. And without having those media relations skills as the backbone, I would not be able to be in these scenarios now. So it's just really cool to look back and see how all of these steps have sort of accumulated and turned into really, really valuable skills.
Now, I mentioned before that we only met once when I interviewed you in person. That's back when I was still making an effort to go to the university whenever I could, do my interviews in person. Um, And then we never saw each other again until, actually 5 years later this year, when I invited Havana over. She mentioned, to the pitch pad right here for dinner with a bunch of other pitch stars, and it was that long since I had seen you again. I do talk a lot about, even if you're in a remote situation, the importance of in-person experiences. During your internship with Pitch, we were not able to do that because we were restricted. We weren't allowed to do that. There were all these restrictions. But I'm just curious now, looking back on that, do you think that the lack of in-person connection affected your relationship with me during your time at Pitch? Or did you feel more connected or disconnected despite the distance and isolation? What was going on with you at that time?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I actually don't think that our connection was impacted at all because of the lack of in person contact. I think, if anything, the uncertainty that the pandemic created allowed us to become more connected because we were all going through something entirely new together. And I think that it led to more honest conversations about the state of the world and how are you feeling and how's your family and how's everyone doing, that, maybe we typically wouldn't have had because we would just be talking about the work and how was your weekend and, some of those more high level things. But I think it was really an interesting time and a time that allowed to, you know, break down the barriers. It doesn't matter if you're together, it doesn't matter where you are. You can connect with people if you care and you show that you care and that you want to connect with them.
For me, I remember, like, I just wanted to maintain these clients because I didn't want to lose all my clients, because that would have meant that I would have lost all of you at that time too. I had to let you go. And I knew that, especially during this uncertain time, jobs were important. So I was really hustling to, like, change all the angles to convince my clients, no, let's not, a lot of them wanted to wait. Let's wait it out and see what happens. And I just kind of felt like, okay, this could last a really long time, and I didn't want to wait. So I was very focused on that. When I think back about my experience, I do remember connecting with you, asking about your family. I think I even shipped you, like, some food one time. I was, like, trying to do everything that I could, but I would really love to hear your perspective on how I did as a leader during that time. Was there anything that I could have done better in retrospect during that hectic time that you think would have made the experience better for you?
I really don't think so. I think what what's interesting that you just pointed out, and something that I did not think about then, was all the work that you were doing as a business owner behind the scenes to make sure that you were staying afloat. I don't think that, at my, ripe young age, just coming out of college. Like, I was not thinking about those things. But now, in my role now and being exposed to the managerial side of things, I realize that that is a really important part of the business. And, I think to an extent, it's good to expose the people that you work with to those things, but also not too much, right? And knowing that someone's still in college, there's still experience that they're lacking in learning. Um, but I mean, overall, as a leader, I think you did really so much to make sure that we were all connected and, staying in close communication. And you really made sure that we knew that you cared. And I think that was really important. It would have been interesting to know maybe a little bit more behind the scenes of what it was taking for you to keep those clients, even though it probably would have went over my head at that point because I wouldn't have had the, complete understanding of what it takes to run an agency and what that looks like. But in hindsight, that is a really interesting point that I hadn't even thought of.
Yeah, it's such a fine line too. I think as a manager or a boss or a business owner, like you want to be transparent with your team, but you don't want to scare them so much that they're going to like leave you if they think things are really uncertain. And I do remember during that time navigating it carefully, like trying to share, the importance of things with the clients without absolutely freaking everybody out because I knew there was already so much stress. But yeah, it was interesting to do that, and I also think too, it depends on where you are at your stage in your career, like how you take in the information as well, but I think it's also a good thing to remember if you are just starting out in your career to keep in mind, like, maybe, the boss or manager is acting a certain way and there's more stress that they're under that you don't realize. And sometimes they push that stress to you, like when things are urgent. And it could just be a matter of saying, hey, it seems like things are really under stress. I'd like to understand your position a little bit more so that I can help you. But I think you bring up a really good point, often we push people when we're being pushed, some it's usually coming from somebody else.
Yes. And to that point, I think you bring a very valuable perspective as being, the owner of your business and running it completely. Um, I think that goes to show how you were able to navigate it so well because it was, all coming from you. I think that's really just really incredible.
So let's transition a little bit. After your time at Pitch and you did move on, you got into this luxury high-end real estate industry. And I want to know what drew you to that particular sector. Was it something that you were interested in and you were going after, or did it just happen organically? How did you get there?
It really happened organically. I knew that I wanted to move to the East Coast of Florida. So that was sort of a first step. And then I was looking for any agency that would hire me at that point. To be frank, during the pandemic, it was tough. The job market was not easy to navigate because companies were uncertain. PR and communications were one of the first things that people were cutting, from budgets. So I was able to find a job at a public relations agency in South Florida, Levy Public Relations, and they had a really interesting set of clients. There was a mix of luxury real estate, sort of middle market multifamily real estate, and hotels, restaurants, and some community and neighborhood organizations. So I sort of just fell into that. I had always had an awareness of the real estate market because that's what my parents have always done. So I generally had heard of it. Um, Something that I bring up to my dad all the time is that I always said, "No, I don't wanna go into real estate. That's your thing. You can have it. I'm gonna do communications, and I'm really happy about it." And then it was just sort of this, you know, divine thing that happened that I ended up going into this industry and really loving it. But I think starting my career in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area was perfect for setting the stage for getting into real estate because real estate development, as is New York City, such a big part of the landscape down there. So it was really great to see and be able to be part of that from the early part of my career. And then as time went on, I felt, you know, this is something that I really enjoy. It's dynamic, it's always changing, it's different. There's so many similarities within the PR industry and the real estate industry. Every day is different, every building looks different, the design is different. And so I found that there was a lot that I could really dig into in that industry. And I would say about 2.5, 3 years ago, I decided I'm just gonna stick with real estate and make that my niche.
So, very important lesson, everybody. Havana just said, never say, I'm not going to do something because then you end up doing it.
So true.
Like, I'm not going to get married, or I'm not going to have children, or I'm not going to work in this industry. If you
Right?
make a proclamation like that, it probably is going to happen. All right. So you're in the real estate, you're loving it. What do you love most about it?
I love that it plays such a big part in a community in a city. And especially moving to New York City and taking the jump to move here, having only visited the city twice before, just driving my car from Florida up here. Um, I knew that I wanted to stick in this industry because I can walk around and I can point out different buildings, and each one has a story and it has history and it has meaning. And it's been really helpful, one, for me to ground myself in the community in New York City and learning. There's no better way to learn a city than to learn how to build and develop real estate. Um, but then also it's exposed me to different parts of the US and frankly the world that I had not been privy to previously. And so being able to learn the designs and how a place looks and why it looks a certain way because of the real estate and because of what's being built there has been really impactful. And my work has led me to, of course, I do a lot of work here in New York City, but a lot in Detroit, a city that I had never been to before work and had never understood. But there's so much architectural history and these beautiful Art Deco buildings that are all across the city. Similarly with Baltimore and, what the design of a space looks there, and Cleveland and all these different places that I feel really connected to through my work. So it's really special.
So are you still pitching? How's pitching play into your role?
Yes, I do. Very much. I think, it's taken a different shape as I've sort of moved up in my career. I find myself pitching, more so taking if there's a big exclusive or a big announcement or something that's a little bit more sensitive and might take layers to understanding. That's what sort of where I find myself in these days. Um, but there is no shortage of building announcements or financing announcements or, design trends and, all these things that I'm still very much in the weeds in. And um, I've really spent a lot of time trying to build new relationships with people here because after working a couple of years in the South Florida market, that market is a lot smaller than the folks that are in New York City, and so I felt I was able to get a really good grasp on those contexts there, which has been really helpful moving into this role because, of course, New York City developers are wanting to get into the Florida business as well, so there's a lot of overlap. But yeah, it's definitely been a learning curve trying to parse through the media landscape here in New York because there's so much going on.
Yes. Ha What have you find that's, like, really different between your work that you did in Florida versus New York, and which do you like better? Which atmosphere do you like better? What's been the learning curves coming to New York?
Coming to New York and working for BerlinRosen, it was an intentional decision to move to a larger company, one that had more clients and also a bigger team. So the team that I work on is currently about 75 people, and then our real estate team is about 15. So there's layers of the different groups that I'm able to work with and the different work that I do with my team and then with my larger cities team that I'm in. And so that was really a learning curve. Previously my agency was very small. I was one of always less than 20. And so I had everyone that I work with, we had really close visibility into every single thing that I was doing. We were on every single client account together. And now I'm in a role where I'm on many different teams with many different people. And that requires knowing how to work differently with different people and being able to advocate for yourself and speak to what I have going on and if I can meet this deadline or not. Because, previously, the couple of people that I worked with on a daily basis, they knew every single thing that I was doing. So that was definitely a learning curve, but something that I've come to really enjoy being able to have so many different perspectives with so many different people on my team.
Now, I noticed that since you have been at BerlinRosen, you've had quite a few promotions in a relatively short amount of time. What do you attribute that success to? How did you make that happen?
Well, thank you. I think when I came in to this role and just approaching my entire career, I have always been very ambitious. And being a leader has sort of always naturally been my, forte, I would say. And I've been incredibly lucky to have managers in my role now and my role previously that have been really supportive and dedicated to my growth in a way that is really so like my dad jokes all the time that it's crazy that I have never had a bad boss between you and all the people that I've worked with. It's really incredible, the people that I've been able to be exposed to. So I, attribute a lot of my success to those people that have taken the time to mentor me and teach me and, to help me grow. And so when I came into this role, I was very clear about where I want to go and my goals and what I want to achieve. And it's just been really incredible, the support from my team and the people that I work with to help me get there.
Couple of things that you said, I just want to draw attention to. You said you never had a bad boss, but do you think that's partially because when you're interviewing with folks too, that you're intuitively sensing, do I want to work with this person? Are you making part of that decision, or and the way you describe it makes it just sound like you got lucky, but I'm not sure that's it. Because I remember even when I was interviewing you, I remember you being very focused and attentive on me, like almost like you were, maybe you didn't realize you were doing this, but you were analyzing me. I mean, do you feel like that's a little bit on you that you've had good leaders because you're seeking good leadership?
Maybe at the beginning of my career, I didn't know that I was doing that. Now I think it is a little bit more intentional because I know I'm more secure in who I am and what I seek from a role and what I know I can bring. And then if you have a awareness of that, you're able to look and see and sort of reflect, is this person or is this environment going to give me that same energy back? So I think that's an interesting point that I hadn't thought of. But I do think that's true. I could not imagine
The
being in an
energy that
interview.
you seek the energy that you're looking to put out
Yeah,
there too.
exactly.
And then the other thing that you said was that you're with each step up or each advancement, you were very clear with your manager about where you wanted to go. Can you just give us an example of what that looks like? I mean, is it like day one, you're like, "Hi, I'm Havana, and this is where I want to be. I want your job." I mean, how do you do that? Because someone might be intimidated about exactly how they present that information. How do you present it?
So how I have presented it in the past is, of course, not rushing too much into things, right? So taking the time. I remember for the first at least 3 or 4 months at BerlinRosen, I was very much still learning the ropes, learning, what the clients looked like here, what my team, how we work together. And pretty quickly I realized that there was a role for me in which if I wanted to move up and become a leader on my team, there was room for me to do that. And so I sort of, had conversations with my manager. Hey, I noticed that on this certain client account, I'm able to step up and talk a little bit more in the client calls. I would love to lead these from start to finish. That would be a really good, growth level for me in my career. And so bringing those things up individually as they came up was really great because we were able to talk about, what that looked like, any potential roadblocks, and how to move past it and go forward. So, that was really great. And that's just sort of evolved over time and with gaining new responsibilities that'll look different and has continued to look different, over the years. But making that one step and saying, "Hey, I feel like there's a place for me to step up a little bit more in this area. Do you support me doing that? How can I do that best? And, what do you need from me to make that happen?"
I like that. And thank you for clarifying that because a lot of times we think that when we're trying to say where we want to go, it's like asking for a promotion, but you're not doing that. You're saying, hey, I see an area in this little, on this meeting or on this campaign that we're working on, and I would like to do a little bit more. Would you, support me in doing that? I love the way you phrase that. And then as they kind of see that you're growing in those areas, then it becomes an obvious, hey, we want to move this person up because they're capable and they're willing to take the risk. I like that. Now,
Thank
you mentioned that you're kind of getting into leadership roles yourself now. So, can you tell us about who you're managing or what kind of management roles you're getting into at this young stage of your career? What are they giving you to manage?
It has definitely been a shift and a big learning curve, and one that I'm still very much working through. But when I was brought into this newest role, this is the level in which you're able to have direct reports. And so I had started with one direct report, which led into another once we had another role to hire for. And to the point that you made about connecting with people in the early parts of, a job and being part of that interview process, I had felt that connection with these two people that I work with very closely in the beginning during the interview process. And so that has led to us really forming a great relationship that has translated into, being a manager and supporting them directly day to day and meeting with them weekly and carving out goals and growth and what that looks like. And so that has been one really impactful part of this new position and something that I have always been wanting to work towards because I feel so grateful for the mentorship and leadership that past managers have shown me. And it's really, really rewarding to be able to, you know, be in that role now where I can have that impact on someone else. And it's something that I really don't take for granted.
That's great. I'm so happy to hear that you're weaving in mentorship into your management style. Can you give us an example of, how you weave mentorship into your management style? Like, what will you do for someone, for example?
I like to think that mentorship happens every day and every moment if you let it. I think about that constantly, not just for my two direct reports, but for, all the people that I work with that are more junior on the accounts that I'm on. And I think it looks different for a lot of different people. And I think one, it takes understanding who you're working with and how they best receive information and knowing that first, and then being able to, with that, taking and giving them a platform to grow in a way that's best for them. So, for instance, I know that someone that I work with really likes to receive feedback in the moment, right when it happens, and, just have a direct conversation about it. And so, you know, I'll say, "Hey, next time let's think about it this way," or, you know, is there another aspect of this that maybe we can consider even for another situation that's going to happen in the future? And they really receive that well. Others, I think you have to be more direct and more, very specific with feedback and maybe not a casual way, but more of a formal way because that's how they like to receive feedback. Um, but I think also at the end of the day, mentorship is really about how you show up and the role that you're showing to them that they hopefully can mimic and, take some from your playbook and, how you deal with things, how you approach things. So if you're leading with that level of mentorship, every single day, I think it'll also happen inadvertently without you having to, go out of your way to do it.
Yeah, you just make it part of your leadership style, which is sounds like it's what you've done, and that's amazing because you've learned from your leaders that you've worked under, and you're weaving that into the leadership that you have now with people that are working for you. And hopefully they'll go out there and do the same, and it'll just keep passing it on. Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there listening or watching this podcast that might want to connect with you and stay connected. You said you like to network. What's the best way for people to connect with you from our community?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I like to message and chat with people and connect with people, so please do drop me a message. And then I'm also just on Instagram for my personal account at Havana Gaz.
That's where you'll find Havana going to concerts if you follow her on
All
Instagram.
the time.
Well, Savannah, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you've inspired so many people in your career journey and that you're going to continue to do so. And I want to encourage everyone to share this episode so we can get more people exposed and inspired by all the amazing things that Havana is doing. And do make sure that you connect with her on LinkedIn. She's on LinkedIn at Havana Gazlay and on Instagram too, if you just want to see her fun concert going, see what's the hottest thing to go see in music. So thank you, Havana, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Amy. This is amazing. I really just so grateful to have you in my life as a mentor. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'm lucky to have you. And I'm glad you're here in New York. And
Yes.
that means we can get together more often, more than every 5 years, let's hope. And thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of Pitch Live with Amy Summers. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a rating or a review. Your feedback helps us plan future episodes. I hope you're inspired today and you will get out there, pitch, advocate for yourself. As Havana says, just ask for a little bit more responsibility in something that you're already working on, and that will help you get jump-started in your career. As a bonus, make sure you go to necvox.com where you can get motivated, hone your communication skills, and binge as much mentorship as you want whenever you need it. The link's going to be in the show notes, along with all of Havana and my social media handles. So let's stay connected so we can continue to follow you in your success. And Havana, keep making success happen. MSH. Until next time.
Thank you so much.